podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
We're back and the sun is shining in London again. We haven't seen this for what feels like about 17 months. I don't think it's been quite that long, but the sun is shining. It is coming into springtime, and what a massive spring it's going to be for Chelsea. I have been looking at the fixtures this morning, and as I will go through shortly, it's a huge end to the season for Chelsea. I think it had kind of snuck up on me a little bit that there was only 11 games left of the season. We've just had so many games, haven't we? And we're going kind of week to week through this crazy number of fixtures. And suddenly it was like, oh, right, it's crunch time now. There are 11 games left. And as I will go through shortly, there's not an easy one in there. That's what I'll give you now as a quick headline. There is not a banker in those fixtures for Chelsea. And if Chelsea are going to get Champions League this year through the league, and we could win the Champions League, by the way, don't forget that. But if we are to get Champions League, which will mean top 5, that's pretty much guaranteed, we are going to have to put in a Herculean effort similar to what we did last season, where we really, really ground it out and put that really good run in. Do you remember last season was kind of all about locking the door at the back, wasn't it? We had some really important 1-0 wins in that run. Away, obviously away at Forest on the last day of the season was massive, where Levi Colwill scored that goal. He was so important in that run. I felt he played his best football in a Chelsea shirt in the last 2 months of the season. You had home to Man United the week before that with Cucurella scoring that wonderful header from the ridiculous Reece James cross. You had home to Everton, which is a 1-0 with that great Nicholas Jackson goal. And really that run was all about the players switching on, stepping up and playing out, locking the door, really. Chelsea are going to have to do something similar to get Champions League. And as I'll talk about now, it is incredibly tight. So let me just give you a quick feel of the league table. We are in 5th. It's basically it will be 3 out of 4 that will get Champions League between Villa, Man United, Chelsea, and Liverpool. I can guarantee that pretty much now. Villa at the moment, 6 points ahead of Chelsea. All of the teams have played the same number of games. They're on 51. Man United, 3 points ahead on 48. And Chelsea and Liverpool level on 45 points. Chelsea do have a pretty far superior goal difference, actually, than the others. But I always think this. I always look at it every year and go, oh, that's like an extra point. How rare is it actually that comes to pass? It's so rare that meaningful league positions are decided by goal difference. Obviously, a great thing to have in your back pocket if you need it, but I think it's fairly rare that comes to the case. So let's have a look at the Chelsea fixtures and talk them through. We play all of those guys, by the way, all of those teams around us. In fact, we play everyone in the top 6 in this run. Yes, it of course starts with Arsenal on Sunday, which we'll do a bit of a deeper preview on shortly, so I won't get into too much detail there, but clearly a very difficult game. Then we go to Aston Villa on Wednesday, so 3 days later. I'm going to say this now. I think Chelsea have to win at Aston Villa. Whatever happens on Sunday, win, lose or draw against Arsenal, Villa likely will win their game this weekend. They're away at Wolves on Friday night. I think Chelsea have to go to Villa and win. Because as I'll discuss, I think Villa are the team out of the group who I think Chelsea probably most likely to, or are most likely to slip, I think, in this run. Chelsea then have Wrexham away on a Saturday in the FA Cup, and then back to the league a week later, home to Newcastle. Newcastle probably, if I'm being honest, will be focused on Champions League. Their league position, they're bang mid-table at the moment. So I think for Newcastle, the priority as they got through, obviously, last night into the knockout stages, having beaten Qarabag, will be on Champions League. So home to Newcastle, we've got a good record against. You'd hope would be one of the games Chelsea will be looking to get 3 points. A week later, we go to Everton. Good news for us is that it's not a Goodison. First game at obviously Everton's new ground. Saturday late game, 5:30. Never easy at Everton, as we know. We then have a double header against the Manchester clubs. Home to Man City, 11th of April, bang in the heat of their title race that it will be. And then a week later, another key game against one of our rivals in Man United on the 18th of April. I pause for a moment to talk about Man United here. Oh, Carrick has done everything we hoped he wouldn't do, hasn't he, as the new manager there. Talk about new manager bounce. The thing for me when he got appointed was the fact he brought Steve Holland in with him. And we know at Chelsea how good Steve Holland is. And it just feels like they've got Man United playing again, doesn't it? They're suddenly so much tighter at the back. And all of those summer signings, Mbuemo, Sesko, Cunha, have all just started to sing and almost taking turns sort of scoring important goals. And when you've got Bruno Fernandes in the team, as we know, he's just a goal and assist machine. They're always going to get goals. The big thing for United, I think, is that they have no other distractions. Villa, Chelsea, Liverpool, all still in Europe, all still in the FA Cup. United have 11 games left all season, full stop. That is it. And I think that could be pretty important for them. We then go away to Brighton on the 25th of April. Brighton not having a good season themselves. They're 14th at time of recording. But, that, as we know, is like a derby game now, the way that Brighton get up for playing us. And we have had many a bad visit to Brighton in recent years, including 2 last season, where I think we were almost suicidal on this podcast. Home to Forest on the 2nd of May. Probably looking at the fixture list, that the easiest among them. But, of course, Forest fighting for their lives for relegation, so not easy. And then another one of those big rival games away at Liverpool on the 9th of May. Liverpool, unfortunately, again, have sort of, if you look at their form, they've just started to grind out results. And I don't think they're playing particularly well, Liverpool, but they have a knack. 1-0 at Forest at the weekend, late goal. I mean, ridiculously late goal, wasn't it, there? 3-0 against Brighton, a really good 1-0 away win at Sunderland as well. I think it was Sunderland's first defeat at home all season. They lost to Man City, but no shame in that, really. And they smashed Newcastle 4-1. I always have a feeling with a cup team like Liverpool that they'll just find a way. And a little bit like a few years back when they were miles away from the Champions League, and then Alisson scored that goal from a corner, didn't he, late on, and they ended up getting over the line. I just wonder if Liverpool have got too much quality and will just find a way to get there, which is why I kind of think that Villa are the ones that we need to try and reel in by winning there in the week. We then have home to Spurs on the 17th of May, our final home game of the season. Is that the day that Chelsea send Tottenham down to the Championship? I mean, can you imagine? Can you actually imagine the way that Spurs are playing? Wow. And then our final game of the season is away at Sunderland, 24th of May. On paper, obviously incredibly tough game. Sunderland, as I said earlier, have been impeccable at home, really. The only thing I would say is last game of the season, likely they'd have nothing to play for at that point. So if Chelsea need to go there and get a result, again, it's not a bad time probably to play them. But what you really get in that fixture list is kind of what I mentioned earlier. There is not a banker among them. And there aren't many bankers in the Premier League these days, let's face it. We found that out the hard way against Burnley on Saturday. But yeah, if Chelsea are going to do it and get a Champions League, it will be, to be fair, a brilliant achievement by Liam Rosenior from what he picked up. And it will mean us needing to step up. And what are you looking at? You're looking at sorting out these defensive issues, stopping conceding from set pieces, and we need Cole Palmer to find his form again. We hoped really that after the hat-trick against Wolves, where he obviously didn't play great, but he got a bit of momentum, and then a good performance against Leeds, despite that miss at the end, that maybe he was back on the right path, but it was a step backwards against Burnley for him in his performance. Talked about that chance he missed to make it 2-0. We need Cole Palmer at his best if we're to get Champions League. And at the moment, João Pedro is carrying a hell of a lot of the load for the forward line. So he's going to be just incredibly important. Before we move on to other things, how important is it that Chelsea get the Champions League? Let's talk about that. The first thing I'll say is, from a fan perspective, my view is always that trophies are more important. So if you were to say to me now, let's take the Champions League out of the equation, or say that Chelsea gets to the quarterfinal of the Champions League. So let's just take that. And you were to say, you're going to finish sixth, just going to miss out in the Champions League, but you're going to win the FA Cup. You can have a great day at Wembley in May, bury the hoodoo of Wembley that we've had recently, get a domestic trophy under your belt. Then personally, and I think this will split people, but personally, I would take that. Because for me, all of the Chelsea seasons that I look back on with fond memories, and kind of the games that I'll rewatch and look back at, are trophy wins and seasons where we've won something. So to me, that's always got to be the bread and butter. And so I would take that. And the second reason is I always do feel like it's slightly overplayed, mainly by the media, just how important it is to get Champions League qualification. Now, of course, it's important. Of course, the financial side of it and all those sort of things are vitally important. But in this sort of modern day of 24/7 news cycles, you do get kind of led to believe that is the absolute be all and end all. And if you don't get it, the club will be screwed. And probably Man United actually is a great case in point. They obviously last year had a disaster season. They finished 16th or 17th. Went into that Europa League final against Spurs. And it was all a shootout for the Champions League and the trophy. Man United lose, and all the talk is, well, they're going to lose Bruno Fernandes, they're going to lose one or two other top players. They won't be able to do much in the summer. And the reality, obviously, is very different. Didn't lose anyone important. When it came to the summer, they got the players they wanted. Mbeumo, Spurs wanted him, but he chose Man United. They got Cunha, they got the players they wanted. They spent the money. I kind of think, and I think Chelsea have been in similar situations before where we've not got Champions League, but say still signing N'Golo Kante that summer, still been able to do business. So I don't necessarily think it would be as a big a disaster as the media will paint it as. I don't think you suddenly see Cole Palmer, Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo slapping in transfer requests on the 25th of May or things like that. But of course, the club, it will be a big priority for them. And there are a number of other commercial reasons why Chelsea will say it's very important. But I don't know. I just think commercially, after we won the Club World Cup last summer and got the Champions League, so much was made of the importance of that, and that Chelsea would now be able to go and pick from a whole realm of different shirt sponsors and ask for whatever money we wanted, and we've made so much money that it's going to completely change the world. The reality is, we only got shirt sponsor last week. Do you know what I mean? And nothing really changes. So the transfer policy hasn't massively changed, etc., etc. So I don't think it would be a disaster, but clearly it's incredibly important. Don't get me wrong. Right, let's talk about Arsenal. It's a big game. I think team selection-wise, you wouldn't have thought there's a huge amount really that William Rosenior will do differently. He went there with the back three, didn't he, in the League Cup? So, and let's face it, it worked pretty well. So I wonder if that will be a temptation for him to spring a surprise. We don't know. I think the big miss is Fofana, obviously for his red cards. There'll be no Wes Fofana. So centre-back is going to be a big, big decision. We know Chalobah will play. If he does a back four, I think the one thing we're going to be looking at is it can't be Tosin. It just can't be Tosin. So does he trust Mamadou Sarr? Or is it Achimpong? Badiashile is another option, I guess. I think he's fit. But yeah, that's going to be a big one to watch out for. Or does he spring a surprise and play a back three with Reece James and Hato either side of I think that could be something we see. It could be that you see Reece James and Gusto together on the right with Reece kind of as a right centre back and Gusto as a wing back. Who knows? Let's not try and second guess what we'll do. The things that I don't want to see is I don't want to see Tosin. I don't want to see Badiashile, to be honest, and I don't want to see Gusto at left back. They're the things that when the team comes out, I'll be looking for. We don't know on the Esteval injury yet. Again, whether he's fit for Arsenal or not, I think it's so important that he is back for this run-in of games that I've just talked through. Something like a Villa away, you just really would want an Esteval there, wouldn't you, for a bit of magic? So really hope that his injury isn't too bad. Rumours are that it shouldn't be, but let's wait and see when he's on the pitch. And the rest of the team, I think, pretty much picks itself. The forward line at the moment, there aren't enough options really for it to be a big consideration. Didn't really mention Romeo Lavia, the fact he was on the bench. against Burnley. I don't think he'll obviously start against Arsenal, but the idea of him starting to get some minutes, against Villa and the like, again, if we could get him fit for the run-in, it's like a new signing, isn't it? But let's not tempt fate. It's massive. It's a massive run-in, and yeah, I think go to Arsenal, do whatever you can to get a point, go and get a 0-0, and then go to Villa and win. And then you put yourself in a really good position for the run-in. Before I hand over to Joe, we have an Arsenal fan to help us preview the game. Jeffrey very kindly offered to do a voice note for us, and we asked him a few questions that he rattled through for us. So first one is, how confident is he that Arsenal can finally get that first league title in over 20 years? Wanted to get his opinion on the players that they bought from Chelsea, of which there are 3, obviously, that will be there in the squad on Sunday. His thoughts on the game on Sunday. And finally, just for a bit of fun, does he want Tosin to be the latest ex-Chelsea player to join Arsenal? Over to you, Jeffrey, and then over to you, Joe. Oh, I'm a bit nervous.
Okay, so to your first question, how confident am I that Arsenal can win the league this season? After the Wolves game, a 1 out of 10, I'd say, so not at all confident. I pretty much lost belief. The panic and the fear in the players was palpable, and the equaliser from Wolves was inevitable. You could just feel it coming. And as an Arsenal fan, we've been here so many times before. That said, I'm now fresh off the back of another wonderful North London derby, smashing of Spurs. And I would put myself more at 5 out of 10, I'll say. I want to believe we can, but for me, it's 50-50. I'm scarred by the past 3 seasons where we've come short. And ultimately, as much as I want us to show up and play like we did against Spurs every week, that's just not what we've been doing all season. We've had a lot of games that are Wolves-like in our approach, in our caution, in the sort of restriction that's put on our play, which I think comes from the manager. And my fear is we revert to that and then revert to the same outcomes rather than continue what looks like, and what we all hope is important change in the way that we play for back of the Spurs bin. What do we all think about the ex-Chelsea lads? My brother always refers to it as Arsenal making another signing from the Chelsea bins, and I could probably find a really angry message, going back to the Jorginho signing, and even further back. I found some old phones, but definitely on this phone, Jorginho, Havertz, Kepa, Madueke, none of them were met with delight, I think, by the Arsenal fans. However, Havertz, top scorer last season, 9 goals, which is not the greatest return, but he missed a lot of games through injury, and, we missed him a lot when he was out. He's hardly played this season, but got a good goal against you lot, and got a good assist for Gyökeres when he played in the 10 position in the Champions League. And I think at the moment, Arsenal fans really value anyone that passes the ball forward to Gyökeres and sets him up, because we just want to see him used in the way that he ought to be used by the team. Madueke, much better than we all feared, I think, when he was signed in the summer. And I think so much of that negativity was just because he was signed before Eze and Gyökeres, and people thought, that might be the only signing we get. He's actually been really valuable, really useful. He is a real option at a time when Saka is, not as good as the last couple of seasons. And all the Chelsea fans I know told me, you won't get much end product out of him. And you're all right. His goals and assists, they don't set the world on fire from a stats perspective, but he creates real danger more often than not when he plays. And he has mostly had good games for us. So, we're all pleased to have Madueke on board. Kepa, probably less opportunities than the others for us all to warm to him, but he's made the most of his limited chances. And he is a massive step up from last season's standing keeper, which was Neto, on loan from Bournemouth. Was awful, frankly. So I think Kepa, is sort of had a boost by virtue of that sort of previous bad experience. But how do I see the game going on Sunday? Now, I mean, you probably can tell that I'm not the most optimistic Arsenal fan, putting it at 5 out of 10 on us winning the league. That said, I have a little bit of concern with putting in another Wolves performance and show up playing cautiously and not getting enough shots on goal in the first half, sort of killing the game. That's the type of play that's really hurt us this season. But I think post Tottenham, I just think we might be onto something here. I really am hoping that Arteta has turned the corner on that style of play, and we're going to come for you a bit more. And I think if we do that, we'll get the win. Obviously, you lot are much better than Spurs. Not saying much, especially the Spurs of this season. But you've probably got that ability to just self-implode even more than Arsenal seem to have at the moment. You know, whether that's a red card or defensive errors, I just feel like we really have to stuff it up to not turn you over on Sunday. So, yeah, apologies for that, Chelsea fans. And it's a weird feeling for someone of my age, which is, I guess, early 40s, because for so long, post Mourinho, it was a really scary game to play Chelsea and not one you went into expecting to win. But that has not been the case the last 2 to 3 seasons. And yeah, I expect that to continue on Sunday. All right. Cheers. Bye. Oh, I almost forgot. Last one. Do we want Tosin? Absolutely not. No way. I asked my 10-year-old son, who's a massive Arsenal fan, and he said, no more rubbish players. So that's a definitive answer. And, you know, like probably many of your listeners, half the time I just tune in to listen to Joe when I've seen that there's been a mistake by Tosin in a Chelsea shirt in the highlights. And yeah, my young son as well always looks forward to getting your reaction to that and listening to it in the car together. So yeah, that's Arsenal line on Tosin, I'm afraid. You can keep him.
And we're back, as Chris just said. And as we head into a very dangerous set of fixtures, as Chris has rightly pointed out, we can't get too ahead of ourselves and we have to just stick with the here and now. And that is obviously Arsenal at the Emirates at the weekend. And I wouldn't say that I'm nervous. I'll be honest. I'm not nervous. I think the time to get nervous is when you feel like you've got something to lose. At the moment, I don't really think that Chelsea have got, you know, a league position to lose as such. I mean, we are in that little zone of 3 or 4 teams, as Chris rightly points out, that are fighting for that 4th and 5th position, which in the grand scheme of things does feel a little bit crap. But I sort of now understand, and it's very apt that we're playing Arsenal all weekend. There was a spell under Wenger where Arsenal were the notorious 4th place finishers, and we used to laugh at them a little bit and say, why are you celebrating 4th place? I don't think any Chelsea fan is celebrating 4th position by any means, but yeah, it's sort of an indictment of where we are. I'll just go quickly back to Chris's point there about trophies and finishing 4th and what have you. I think that where it's difficult and where fan bases across the country would be split, teams that haven't won many trophies. So if you go back to Crystal Palace last season, winning the FA Cup, that is a huge deal. That is a massive deal. And it is a massive deal if Chelsea win it, don't get me wrong. And why do football players play football? Is so they can count their silverware at the end of the season. It is why Harry Kane moved from Tottenham to Bayern Munich. Some said, well, why are you going there? Well, in his opinion, the Bundesliga is probably a trophy that they should win most seasons, so he gets a league championship medal. They also have a very good chance to win the cup in Germany. And then in his own mind, Bayern Munich are certainly one of the top, I would suggest, 4 teams to win the Champions League most seasons. So he gives himself a very good chance there. So players move to clubs to find silverware. Whereas Fofana this week has spoken about missing out on the Club World Cup, etc. I don't think he got a trophy for playing in the event. So obviously he missed out on that. And I think that has disappointed him. I think he made a comment that all of his teammates got a trophy and he didn't. So players are very aware at the end of their career. You need to be able to, there's that famous old quote from the Liverpool old guard in the 80s, put your medals on the table type of thing. And that's what I think fan base is now. We all get caught up in this top 4 race. And don't get me wrong, we're all guilty of it, every single person, because you want your club to succeed. And if, for example, let's use Crystal Palace, as I used them a moment ago, if they were to finish in the top 5 positions this season or next season, that would be an absolutely remarkable achievement. Chelsea are looking at top 4 and 5 as the bare minimum, and I think that is where football is different. And the reason for that is you pay bigger money to players on their wages, you pay bigger money for transfer fees, you've got a bigger infrastructure in terms of your academy and what you should expect from that and the money you put into it. There's a whole load of other kind of logistics that go into running a football club and where you see yourself in that football pyramid, if you like. And I think that where I get disappointed is that I see Chelsea invest in players. I see them invest in good young talent. I've seen them invest in old experience, and there isn't really a hard and fast rule. I think somewhere in between that is about right. You need a bit of youth and experience, and sometimes players with no fear. I mean, just go back and remember Ian Robben. When he was signed, no one really knew who he was, but he came to the Premier League. He took it by storm. He was 19, 20-year-old guy, pace to burn, made no kind of excuse for ripping a fullback to pieces that's played in the Premier League for 8 seasons. What sort of reputation you've got, didn't care. And then you've got experienced players alongside him who obviously make sure that all those players are turning up to training on time, eating right, training correctly, not giving half measures in training. You often hear about John Terry and Frank Lampard and players of that ilk talking about their training sessions back in the day. Every training session they said was better than the games they used to play because the squad was so talented. So if you weren't at it, and there'll be plenty of players that have been sold on where they probably weren't doing it in training enough, weren't getting game time because of it, and then end up getting sold. So it's about keeping those young players on the straight and narrow and the older players kind of keeping them in check. Obviously, Chelsea's real issue in this current side is that we don't have a lot of real leaders. And I don't think football, for some reason, I don't know why, but doesn't seem to have followed that path. It seems to be everybody is quite happy to pass the buck and let somebody else take control of the younger players or whatever. No one seems to really lead. There aren't many out there, I would suggest, across world football. I'm sure there are a few, but certainly none in the Chelsea dressing room that really stand out as major leaders. And I personally think that is why Chelsea are so up and down with their form. If there was a real character or a couple of real characters in that dressing room that basically didn't accept these draws, for example, the one against Leeds, the one against Burnley, and there's been some other bad results as well, particularly at home this year, I think that Chelsea wouldn't even need to consider themselves part of the race of the top 3 or 4 positions. But because of that reason, sadly, we are. And where do I feel about it? I mean, of course, if Chelsea can get to the FA Cup final, win that, you'd be over the moon. If Chelsea can get to the Champions League final, even if it didn't win it, you'd be like, okay, look, that's a great season to get to the Champions League final and beat many fantastic European teams across the way to get there. That has to be an achievement, even if you don't win it. But as we know, if Chelsea put in a really bad performance in the next round against Wrexham and they go out, suddenly you go, well, hang on, that's another trophy that is completely gone now. We can't get that one back. And then your league campaign is scrutinised even more. And there's no guarantees of winning anything. You could get to the FA Cup final, finish 7th, lose that, and you go, okay, so now we've gone from maybe winning the League Cup out of that, might have won the FA Cup, we lost in the final. The league campaign suffered a little bit because we were sort of concentrating on the FA Cup and making sure our players were fit for that game. So we actually ended up finishing 7th in the league, so we're not going to get the Champions League places now. And like Chris said, if you were to go out in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, it's a valiant effort, but you get nothing for it. So your league season really looks pretty drab. So that's where getting into those top 4 and 5 positions and cementing your place as one of the elite clubs in the country is so important. So it's hard. It's a really hard one. Like Chris said, that would split any fan base, that decision. But there are, I'd say, probably a lot more younger fans that probably look at, and this isn't a dig or a knock at anybody, but I would suggest there's a lot of younger supporters that will probably look at the 4 and 5 slot and go, yeah, we need to get that. Otherwise, it's been a bad season. And I think probably more of the older guard would look at a League Cup or an FA Cup as an achievement and a trophy. And like I say, that's how you're judged. And I think players overall at the end of their career will always want to win things. So as we go on to Arsenal and we look at that game at the weekend, it was great to hear. So Jeffrey's a really good friend of mine, and I love his stance on football, the way he should be played. And like he said, I think he said on his voice note, if he didn't, he is a season ticket holder and goes to all the home matches, European games, etc. as well. So he's always there. He goes with his family, and if there's anybody best placed to give an opinion, it's definitely him. Obviously, I see Jeffrey a little bit in person, as you can imagine, and we have a laugh about Arsenal's results and Chelsea's results, etc. We were speaking about the Wolves game only a week ago and them dropping points, and then I certainly wasn't laughing at him, but then just said to him at the weekend, well, there you go. There was us talking about Wolves 2, Arsenal 2, and suddenly it's Chelsea 1, Burnley 1, and a 94th minute equaliser from them, and don't we look rather foolish now? But what I would say is how refreshing it is to hear another fan base go through the rigour, because I think us as Chelsea fans, we get hyped up, we get frustrated, we get excited when there's a good result, etc. But as we all know, we're always a game or two away from feeling as though the season's in real decline. And Arsenal sitting top of the table, okay, their lead has been cut at the top of the league. But like I said last week, I think any Chelsea fan in the country would rather be sitting where they were, but Arsenal seem incredibly nervous. But that comes down to them basically finishing second for the last couple of seasons and not quite getting over the line when maybe they should have done. And they're up against their long-term rival, it seems, at the moment in Manchester City. They seem to be everybody's rival for the Premier League these days. And yeah, they are feeling the pressure slightly. And I think that is why it is a good time to play them. I mean, I would have preferred to have played them before the Spurs game. It gave them a little bit of confidence, I'm sure. I think the only trouble I have with Chelsea is you just can't trust them. And there's just too many players, in my opinion, out of form. Cole Palmer's bang out of form. Liam Delap is, I don't think, ever been in form this season. Our best players, in some cases, are injured. You've got Romeo Lavia is a fantastic football player and barely get on the field. Mark Cucurella, sadly, is injured. At the time, it's a very good team. Obviously, Levi Colwell's been injured for the entire season. We now know that Wes Fofana can't play due to suspension. And I don't really care what anybody says. Cole Palmer is definitely carrying something. And I know we've spoken about this injury that he has, that he's playing through. There's no doubt in my mind that chance that he had against Burnley when he was kind of clean through against Kyle Walker. I mean, he had at least another 2 or 3 yards where he could have knocked the ball on and got a lot closer. But he clearly did not trust his body. And he probably thought, that's Kyle Walker behind me and he will outpace me if I don't take this shot on early enough. And I think Kyle Walker of maybe 3 seasons ago, that's exactly what you should have done. Take the shot early, because he probably would have got back at you. But he was never getting there. And Palmer, all he needed to do there was just use his body. And I just think that when you're not playing quite right, when your body's not feeling quite at its best, you make wrong decisions. And that's been a kind of a fact across the game forever. And he's definitely questioning himself, I think, in front of goal at times this year. He's obviously missed a couple of sitters of late. That wasn't a sitter at the weekend by any means, but it's a chance. I said to Chris after the game, Cole Palmer of last season would have taken that ball in, even at the start of the season. Do you remember the Bayern Munich game when he got 2 beautiful goals? He would have taken that ball on just a few more yards and he'd just squared the goalkeeper up and he'd have slotted it in whichever corner he liked and would have walked away, done his celebration and carried on like nothing's happened. Sadly, he's definitely not quite himself. And so again, I hope he can have a fantastic game at the weekend, and he can not prove us wrong, but he can obviously get back to some kind of form. But like Chris says, João Pedro really is the only player in red hot form right now. We've mentioned Caicedo being a little bit off the pace slightly of late. I don't think he's playing badly by any means, but he's definitely not maybe at the level that he was at the start of the season. And yeah, there's a lot of question marks about a few players in the side. I mean, the defence sadly hasn't got better all season long. I think under Liam Rosenior, even though we've conceded a few goals still, we have kind of looked okay in those games, but we've given away rubbish goals. Like, again, not to harp on about it, but Leeds United, we played very well for the most part. For most of that game, defensively and in attack, we look good. And then we have a 6-minute spell of absolute dross. And it sort of makes the whole game look like it was terrible, but in actual fact, it wasn't that bad. And even against Burnley at the weekend, if Fofana doesn't get himself sent off, there's probably a good chance that we win that game 1-0, like Chris said last year. Those 1-0 wins were so crucial at the end of the season that we kind of needed a few of those, and we haven't done it. And sadly, I think that might be our undoing as the season unfolds. Look, Chelsea can come up against any team and get a good result. We know that they seem to be better against the better sides this year, which is strange. It's not been that way for a little while. Arsenal will play a certain way. We know that. They look for set pieces. They look to hit you from long throws and corners. This is no surprise to anybody. Jiffrey himself, again, we've spoken off of the voice notes, and he will tell you exactly the same thing. They are looking. They play quite a slow pace of play. It's not the Arsene Wenger, Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp era. This is a different style. That it's kind of smash mouth football. Lump it in the box as many times as possible. We've got enough big, strong players in there, and we will eventually kind of weigh you down and get a goal. And once we've got a goal, they're very good at defending it. And I think the first goal at the weekend is going to be crucial. I think if Chelsea go behind early on, I think it's going to be very, very difficult. The only way that Chelsea survive is if they don't concede a second very, very soon. If Chelsea can, a bit like Burnley at the weekend against us, if we do go a goal down, we have to stay in the game. We cannot give away loads of chances and make the game 2-0 or 3-0 to Arsenal, because it is going to be completely over. We have to make them sweat for it. A bit like in the reverse leg the other day in the League Cup, even though that game was 0-0 for long periods, up until the death, I should say, really. Chelsea were in that game, and Arsenal will get sweaty. And I think they will get even more sweaty as the game goes on, because it's a league game and they know that Man City are chasing them down. So that's where we need to play on the crowd, because the crowd will get nervous, they will get edgy. And Chelsea have a chance to say against anybody. Am I confident in the game? Not really. Let's be honest. They are. I don't think they're playing great football, Arsenal, but they're playing winning football. So however you look at it, those are the facts that are staring us in the face. I really like what Chris said about the team and the defence in particular. I myself don't want to see Malo Gusto playing at left back. I'm sick and tired of seeing it. Okay, I'm absolutely to the back teeth. Don't want to see it anymore. We have a left back we pay good money for. He's a good young player. And do you know what? If he makes a mistake and he cocks up, so be it. But he's never going to learn sitting on the goddamn bench. So I'd like to see Hato play if we do play a back four. And I'm with Chris as well. I don't want to see Tosin, as you well know. And I don't want to see Badiashile, as you well know. I want to see, it's got to be Mamadou Sarr. It has to be Mamadou Sarr. Again, he may have a nightmare. Who knows? I can't predict that he's going to play well. But he is the hot new thing right now. And if Chelsea go to the Emirates and they manage to get a 0-0 draw or a 1-0 win even a 1-1 draw or whatever, and they play solid at the back with Trev, you've then got a partnership. And I say then at that point, Fofana doesn't get back in ever, but Chelsea, aren't they? And they just seem to rotate these two centre-backs every single week, which is completely unnecessary and nonsensical, and you're never going to get any consistency doing that. But I would like to see those two then given an opportunity against Aston Villa in the week and build something. We have to try and build something. I think Liam Rosenior actually does want to do this. I do think he would like to have two centre-backs that he could trust and play for the remainder of the season. That's how I see it personally. I don't think he's a manager that really wants to keep rotating that area, but he hasn't quite found the two that he likes. Maybe it was going to be Fofana and Trev, but obviously the red card now happens, so it's difficult. So yeah, that's where I'm at with that. They have to wrap Reece in cotton wool this week. He has to play End of. No questions asked. He has to play. In the midfield, it's going to be what we see more often than not. It's probably going to be Santos, Caicedo and Enzo. That's slightly higher pivot. And then, yeah, we want to see Esteval, don't we? Esteval's got to play if he can. It would frighten the life out of Arsenal. And obviously, it would be more than likely going to be Neto on the other side. And I think that they are our two best options. And at the moment, probably our two only options, because Jamie Gittins, I think he's injured for the rest of the season and he wouldn't get in this team anyway. And Garnacho looks completely shot. And the fact that he didn't even come on at the weekend against Burnley, I think it speaks volumes. We, of course, hope that João Pedro can continue his scintillating form. And all we can do really is pray that Cole Palmer suddenly finds a little bit of mojo. And it only takes a moment. I think that's what we have to remember. It only takes a moment to get yourself back into form. It could be a bit of skill and he bins one from 25 yards and suddenly gets a tap in the last minute and gets a second goal. Sometimes that just happens in football. And I'm not guaranteeing it for sure, but I think he just needs something to go his way and he might get himself kind of out of this slight fog that he finds himself currently. I'll end this week just by saying, just for a bit of fun, Jeffrey recorded his son doing the same questions as we asked him. And I heard that played back to me. And it was just so fantastic listening to a 10-year-old boy speak about Chelsea and Arsenal and how he felt about the game was going to go and how he thought that Arsenal were going to finish the season and what was his predictions and how they would do. And it was a fantastic little conversation. I urge anybody out there, if you've got your son or your daughter and they're of an age where they're still very, very impressionable, but they can hold a really good cognitive conversation, I urge you to sort of do things like that. Ask them about Chelsea. Where do you think they're going to finish this season? Who's our best player and why? Pick a player from another side. Would they get in our team? The conversation I heard from Jeffrey and his son was absolutely fantastic. We're not going to air that, of course, but it was just such a really cool thing to do. And I think sometimes it just brings you back down to earth. And listening from a child's perspective is sometimes the best perspective. So I'll leave you with that. I think that it's going to be a very tough game for Chelsea the weekend. Predictions-wise, absolutely no idea. All I can hope for is we don't get beat. And then that is a really sad indictment of where the season's gone for me. But we will be back to review the game and everything else in between and afterwards. And hopefully Liam Roseniak can pull off a miracle. Come on, you Blues.
Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.